Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to episode 297 of the Falcoholic Live. I'm your host, Kevin. I am Falcoholic Kevin, joined by my co-host, as always. He is Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way. Adnan, how we doing tonight?
I'm okay. And not
It's
not
all
not
right,
much
yeah.
happening
Pretty
today.
boring day, as you know, our other guest, Aaron, was saying when we came on. Pretty boring day today, not really much going on, yeah.
I can't wait to just talk about the Dolphins game and then get out of here early tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's just Dolphins and injuries, nothing exciting going on tonight whatsoever. And to talk about this very boring day of Falcons coverage, where absolutely no trades for premier edge rushers have occurred, we have Aaron Freeman at Locked On Falcons. Aaron, welcome back to the show. How we doing?
Yeah, man, you guys only have me on to talk about third string roster battles and preseason games, so we will not be talking about anything else
Yes,
at all
that's
tonight.
that's why you're here. We
Yeah.
we needed to get into the nitty gritty of Jaden Price versus Troy Vival, and will Josh Thompson crack the practice squad? And
I have a
I
lot
know
of Andrew
that's
Stuber takes. I have a lot of Andrew Stuber takes,
yeah,
so
that's
I'm
what
ready.
the people want. That is what the people want. So that's what we're going to be talking
Well,
about. No, because
we're here to actually talk about Dane Cruikshank for the next 20 minutes. So
Dane
a lot.
Cruikshank.
Yeah.
This is the Dane Cruikshank hour. That actually doesn't sound too bad. I think we could probably do a bit with Dane Cruikshank's name because that's a pretty sweet name. But we are going to talk about Matthew Judon coming to the Falcons, of course, and we'll have to talk about the injuries that preceded that move as well tonight. And we will talk about the preseason game. I'm sure we will get to Aaron's Andrew Stuber take at some point. But welcome in, guys. Welcome to the show. Before we dive in fully, real quick, let me bring you word from our sponsor, BetOnline, folks. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football, from the preseason NFL to college football kickoff. BetOnline's got every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. If you think you know your stuff, you can get in on BetOnline's winner-take-all $300,000 NFL Survivor Pool for the upcoming season. You can check that out. You can get in on NFL futures at the moment. You can do the total DGen move of betting on the preseason. We've warned you about that. You've been warned. I no longer feel any obligation to stop you. It's your choice now to bet on the NFL preseason. Go forth and do if that's your choice. You could do it at BetOnline, and when the game's over, head on over to BetOnline's new online casino where they've got blackjack, they've got poker, and they've got over 150 online slots games. So what are you waiting for, folks? Head to that website today, BetOnline, and use our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV to get in on the action. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right. So, lot to get to with this Matthew Judon trade. It just came out right before the show. We were just saying you haven't really gotten a lot of these, news updates right before the show, but now we finally do get one dropping right on cue. And yes, Matthew Judon coming to the Falcons from the Patriots. The compensation is rumored to be a third-round pick, which kind of what you would expect. I wondered if maybe it could have been a fourth, but can't really argue at this point with the Falcons losing Bralen Trice. They were definitely not having the leverage to quibble over the price either. So yeah, Aaron, as our guest, I'll let you get the first crack. What do you think about this move? Just right off the top.
I think it's a great move. Yeah, the Falcons desperately needed pass rush. We've been complaining about this for years, right? Years.
A decade.
We sat here last year at October being like, I hope they make a trade at the trade deadline for a potential double-digit sack guy that will be sort of the key piece to unlocking the full potential of this defense, because that was the one complaint we had about the Falcons defense. As much as an improvement the pass rush was, it still was not a great pass rush last year. And the Falcons then decided, you know what? I think the solution to our pass rush problems is James Smith-Williams, who had one sack last year. And then we're going to take a flyer in this third round rookie in Bralen Trice. And that's definitely going to get us, 15 more sacks this year.
That'll replace Calais Campbell. Yeah.
Yeah. We lost 13 sacks from Calais Campbell and Bud Dupree. Like, it's no big deal. We'll get it back with James Smith-Williams and Bralen Trice. And so it's just extremely frustrating to go this whole offseason when I was like, I guess we're doing this all over again. I've been here before with the Falcons completely punting on their pass rush, and never did it ever come back to bite them. And so it is a wonderful feeling to be sitting here talking with you guys about the Falcons finally addressing their pass rush and getting someone of Matt Judon's caliber. We can quibble about are his sack numbers a little inflated, or all that stuff, but he is light years better than anything the Falcons were attempting to trot out this upcoming season, and is a legit, top end pass rusher. And it's a wonderful day. Wonderful day.
Yeah, I agree with all your points. I think they absolutely need, like, when they had Trice, it's like, okay, they're gonna try to see what they can get from these young guys. It's probably not going to be great, but maybe they can piece something together and get some growth, and so on. I think when Trice goes down, it's like, okay, we can't pretend this is gonna work anymore. There's no more hoping and praying for this, and maybe regardless of the Trice injury, they still would have made a move like this. Who knows? But I still feel like even if they had Trice, this was probably a move that they had to make. And yeah, I'm excited to see what happened. Contract wise, everybody, they're gonna have to figure out what to do with the contract. He does want a new deal. We'll see what that sort of works out to. But before we get into any of those nitty gritty details, Adnan, what's your sort of immediate reaction to this trade announcement?
I loved it. I absolutely loved it, and kudos to Terry Fontenot for it, because yeah, like Aaron said, we have been complaining about it. I mean, we've been complaining about it for years, but all off season, especially if we want to get to just this season. And yeah, no, I don't think that even if Trice didn't go down, I don't think that they could really pretend like this pass rush was really going to work, or this edge group, because they lost two of their more important edge guys over the offseason. And in training camp, the edge guys looked really bad. Like there's really no way to sugarcoat it. The entire edge rotation was not getting pressure on the quarterback. They really weren't doing their jobs. And then, you get to the preseason, first game, Trice goes down, Ikic looks awful, who's also going to be a very important edge piece. And, all of a sudden, and not all of a sudden, but this edge group was easily the weakest on the team. Like, sure, safety, Richie Grant, uh, cornerback, maybe you can talk yourself into Mike Hughes being better on the outside, and Clark Phillips taking that step. But this edge group, I had no hope for. I think it was genuinely, coming into today, arguably the worst edge group in the NFL. And I'm not saying that Judon is going to make them elite, but this is the first time you have a legitimately elite pass rusher on this team since Vic Beasley's 2016 season. But just in general, Matthew Judon, over the past, I saw a couple of ESPN stats about it. Over the last 5 seasons, among pass rushers who had 1,500 pass rush attempts, Judon is second in the NFL in pressure rate at 11.9%, 0.1% behind Nick Bosa. And this is the caliber, an elite caliber player that you have on your roster now in this position, which we have not seen in the past decade. And not only is it going to be a breath of fresh air, but it's going to be like oxygen for this defense, because they were going to suffocate with this pass rush. And Judon is the type of player who sort of, when he's on his game, he can win you a game by himself here and there. Well, when he's really on it. He has 32 sacks over his last 38 games. Before his injury last year, his torn bicep, which cost him, the majority of the season. 15 and a half sacks in 2022, 12 and a half in 2021. Like, these are numbers we have not seen out of an Atlanta Falcons since John Abraham, other than Vic Beasley's, lightning in a bottle season in 2016. So yeah, I'm absolutely thrilled. The third round compensation. I mean, let's just be honest. The Falcons have not hit on third round picks since Terry Fontenot has been here. So I'm sort of like, you know what? I'm fine. I'm more than okay with it. Like what? We can't draft another D'Angelo Malone next year. Ooh. No disrespect to D'Angelo Malone, but we can't draft another Jalen Mayfield next season.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's the secret, is just trade those thirds for top level players. And, a lot of teams take that route, and look, hitting on those late day 2 picks is not always easy. It's much more of a crapshoot than people think. And like the pressure's always on there because it's like, it is a top 100 pick almost always, unless it's a comp pick. So it's like, what do you do with that? It's complicated, right? It's not always easy to evaluate. And, obviously you would have liked it to be a little bit cheaper, but I think the price is ultimately quite fair for Judon, and I think that's just the takeaway. It's the price of doing business, especially at this point in the offseason. Like, if you want to get a player of this caliber from another team, you're going to have to pay. You're just going to walk in and you don't really have any leverage to get him for cheap, right? So we'll of course see what happens with the contract, because that is something to keep an eye on, and we'll probably get to some of the nitty-gritty details here in just a minute. But yeah, I think ultimately I agree with both of what you guys have said. It's this is a good move for this team. I mean, there's no other way to get around it. This is a move that I think they really needed to make, and I'm glad that they did, because I think going into this season with the edge rush being that big of a week, like, it wasn't just like it's questionable. It was like,
it was a catastrophe.
It was a glaring weakness. Like, we just, like, it doesn't really matter what you're doing in the secondary if you can't get any pass rush. And like, yes, maybe the interior, if they go up against teams with bad interior offensive lines, maybe the interior would just be good enough to sort of just smother them, right? Like, maybe. But like, if you don't have any threat off the edge that's legitimate, they're just going to double the inside guys as much as they can. And obviously we've seen with Raheem Morris and now Jimmy Lake's defense, like, they're going to sim pressures. They're going to send linebackers and other guys to blitz, and they're going to try to get one-on-ones for their key guys on the inside. That's kind of what they did with, Aaron Donald. That worked well. But you can't just hope for that to work, especially against good teams. So I think, Judon, yes, he's going to be, I think, going into his age 32 season. So this isn't necessarily like a massively long-term thing. You're probably hoping for a couple more years of high-level play from Judon, probably giving him a small extension, maybe like a 2-year extension or something like that, to make him have 3 years here in Atlanta. But that can be a great way to bridge the gap to actually having some young edge talent, whether Ikic turns into anything, or you go edge with your first-round pick next year, which seems like, that does seem like one of the most likely options for this team given the strength of next year's edge class. So, you're much better off, especially that young guy, having a top high-level guy across from him, so that young guy doesn't have to come in and be the number one. We've seen how poorly that's worked for the Falcons in the past with, Vic Beasley's a great example. Now, yes, Vic Beasley did have a good season in his second year, but they also surrounded him with other talent that was competent that year. So I can't really poke any holes in it, like, other than the fact that, yes, he's 32, right? And you're giving up a third-round pick for a guy that's probably going to be here for 2 to 3 years. I'm just not going to quibble about it, because this is the type of move they had to make, and I'm glad they were bold enough to make it. Obviously going back to last year, if you really want to quibble, you can probably quibble and say, like, well, why couldn't we just get the Montez Sweat deal done? And it's like, well, the Bears had the higher pick, and the Falcons weren't giving up a top 10 pick for Montez Sweat. Maybe you say they could have thrown in a pot sweetener and you get that, and then Montez Sweat's a long-term thing. But like, Judon's also not going to cost you as much either. Like, Judon's going to get a decent extension here, but he's not going to be asking for Hassan Reddick money. Coming off an injury like the way he did, it's going to depress the value a little bit. And either way, like, the reason that I think the Falcons were, there's a couple of reasons that I think the Falcons were much more in on Judon than Hassan Reddick. And, well, just the main one, Judon was practicing with his contract situation, right? He wanted a new deal. He was on the last year of his deal, but he was still taking part and just kind of, whatever. So that means that he's going to be much more amenable to working out a contract extension. Whereas, like, Hassan Reddick hasn't even shown. Like, he's not shown up to Jets anything. He didn't show up in March. He didn't show up in April, May, June, July, August. He's, like, not going to show up. So it's like, if you're not prepared to give Hassan Reddick whatever he wants, which is probably $20+ million a year, at least, then there's no point in trading for him. And the Jets are finding that out the hard way. So I think that Judon, from a financial business perspective, makes a lot of sense. And also, I just think he fits what they want in an edge rusher better than Hassan Reddick. Like, yes, Hassan Reddick is a great pass rusher, but he's not a run defender. And I think, whatever you think about that, the Falcons want their edge rushers to be able to play the run. And that's why Ikic hasn't been playing, right? Because he's a liability against the run. The Falcons don't want their edge rushers, especially their top guys that they're paying big money to be liabilities against the run. They don't need you to be this lockdown run stuffer, but they need you to at least be able to hold your ground out there. Matthew Judon can absolutely stop the run. That's not an issue for him. So definitely excited about this move. And yeah, Aaron, anything else you want to touch on? I mean, do you have any ideas about what type of contract do you think they might hand out to him? Do you think they will give him an extension right off the bat, or what do you think they're going to do here?
Yeah, I certainly think they'll give him an extension. I was speculating about this on the show I did about an hour ago, where I had to stop burning my food in the kitchen because I was cooking dinner, and I looked at my phone and I saw the breaking news, and I'm like, oh crap, I got to go do a show. And so I speculated that my guess is like 19, somewhere in that 19-20 million dollar range would probably be good for Judon. To me, the question is really about, do you guarantee more than 1 year on an extension on that? Just because the thing I talked about the other day when talking about, Kevin, you weren't the only person that said Matt Judon was a more realistic trade than Hassan Reddick. I didn't say it on Twitter.
I just did that to needle you, the hashtag profit. I knew you would get the message. Yeah.
Yes. I did it on a podcast. I didn't do it on Twitter. But like basically, I think the biggest concern about Matt Judon, the biggest red flag, or yellow flag you want to say, is the age, right? Where when you look at other high-end pass rushers, you look at Von Miller, his last good season was that Super Bowl winning season in Ram. That was his age 32 season. You look at Brandon Graham's last season as a full-time pass rusher in Philadelphia was, I think, his age 33 or 34 season. And then there's somebody else that I'm blanking on that I talked about on the podcast that his last productive season was his age 32 season. And so, like, you are a little bit worried. Are you going to get more than one good year out of Matt Judon just based off of history, where this is around the time, somewhere between age 32, 34, that the high-end pass rushers tend to lose something, right? Whether it's they're dealing with injuries, and you saw that with Judon last year, and they just can't stay healthy, or they have to be part-time players, or they lose a little bit in terms of off their fastball. So that's the one concern. But again, to me, with all the things that we've talked about, with the dire situation that the Falcons were in, like, they can't, who cares, right? Like, basically they needed to make a move. And even if Judon doesn't have the longevity that other options that they could have had at any point in the last year have, they just needed to make this move. Beggars can't be choosers, which is the statement I always seem to be talking about whenever I'm talking about the Falcons pass rush. I remember saying that with Dante Fowler. Did they overpay for Dante Fowler? Yes, but this team was so desperate for any type of competent pass rush that they had to overpay for Dante Fowler. And I don't think Matt Judon is the same situation. But for anybody who out there who's like questioning, is this a good move? It's like, well, they had to make this move basically at this point in time. So I think the issue with Judon is just going to be like, can they get him for, I think 19-20 is about where I think it'll get. Could it be more? Maybe. Could it be less? Possibly. But I think that's probably the range where I would guess that the Falcons will be willing to spend on it.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point. And Adnan, what do you think about that? And would you try to re-sign him, give him that extension immediately? Anything, what are your sort of thoughts on sort of the long-term outlook with Judon here?
I mean, I don't think they go into this making a trade expecting this to just be a straight 1 year rental. And we don't even know if Judon was, going to play out the season. I mean, he obviously wasn't holding out or anything, but maybe there was obviously talks, in the works about trading him. I'd be hard pressed to assume that he didn't see this coming and that, he wasn't sort of on board with the move being made. I'm assuming they're going to extend him right away, or by right away, I mean before week 1. And yeah, $19-20 million, that sounds that sounds like fair market value for a pass rusher. I know it sounds like, a lot in general, but that's the going rate for guys who can get to the quarterback. Well, we just don't know it because we haven't had one in a decade. But yeah, I'm with Aaron on this. It's one of those where, yes, you would rather he be younger, of course. You would rather maybe it not be a day 2 pick, but at some point, it's like you are almost going to outright jeopardize your potential this season, given what the edge room was looking like. And you needed someone to come in and to, fix that. And Matthew Judon is the fix. He's a worthy fix. I'm not saying that the pass rush is going to be elite, but it's not going to be the catastrophe that we thought it would be as of yesterday. And my pass rush, I mean pass rush along the edge. Because even the interior pass rush, Kevin, like you said, is going to suffer if those guys can't get home along the edge. And I know the Falcons have a lot of sim pressures. I know that they're gonna blitz a lot of linebackers. They're gonna bring in some looks this season that we maybe haven't seen before. But at the end of the day, if you don't have players that can win their one-on-one battles, it's not going to matter against those really big teams. And against those teams that you're probably going to meet in the playoffs. So yeah, I'm thinking they probably give him 2 to 3 years, $19-20 million. Maybe it goes up to like 21-ish.
Yeah.
But I am interested to see how it's structured too. I'm interested to see what the year 1 cap hit is. I'm interested to see guaranteed money because at the end of the day, it's not all annual average.
Yeah. There's definitely some nuances that I'm sure we'll have time to get into. Some more delicious content for later. But yeah, I mean, I think how they structure it will be interesting. Like Fontenot this is not the Saints, guys. Like they're not going to do some ridiculousness with this contract. I wouldn't shock me if it's a 2-year extension with a void year added. Not necessarily like they're not going to do like a Saints special with like 3 void years and a bunch of crap, but like they've done single void years before with Terry has done single, and that's not super problematic. You're just spreading it out one more year, but I am curious what the number comes in at because coming off the injury, it's like, oh, maybe he has less leverage, but then the Falcons just traded for him, so then you would think he has more leverage. So it's going to be fascinating sort of to see what the number comes in at. And then, you also wonder if Judon might be willing to trade like a lower AAV for more guarantees. A lot of these players, when they get to this like age 31, 32, when they're signing a new deal, they sometimes are willing to take more guarantees in exchange for less total value. So I'm curious how that goes. But, with Judon, I think the takeaway is, I think even if he does fall off a bit as a pass rusher, he's such a good like overall edge player, like that could play all 3 downs. Like if he loses a little bit as a pass rusher, you could still play him on base downs, and like he's still gonna be the best pass rusher you have, probably no matter what. So it's like maybe it doesn't even matter. Like it, and like again, like if you're paying him $19 million, like that's a lot. But like in 2 years when this deal's up, that's probably gonna be like, what, like 16 to 20 on the edge rusher list in terms of like contract value, or maybe even lower, right? I mean, because the cap is going absolutely nuts. So again, like I think, there is always risk with players at this stage of their career, with how long you could get them. What gives me I know that he's coming off I think it was the bicep injury. That's not typically something that's going to linger and affect the next season. That's, one good thing you can say about bicep injuries is assuming the players had plenty of time to rehab and get that upper body strength back. This is not like a lower body injury where it's going to impact your conditioning. It's going to impact your, ability to cut and do all those pass rusher things you need to do. It seems like Judon has had plenty of time to recover. So I don't think the injury is a big cloud hanging over this season or anything like that, where you might be more worried with some lower body injuries and things of that nature. So I'm glad the stars aligned for this. And apparently we beat the Bears for Judon. So, take that, Chicago. You get a little revenge. In the apparently Chicago just doesn't care. They will just literally sign everyone and, send all their draft picks away for veterans. So, take that, Bears. But yeah, I mean, I know that the next question everyone's going to ask, and and I know we've had some questions asked in the chat. Don't worry, guys. We'll get to you shortly. What do you? Justin Simmons is the next question everyone's going to ask. Are we still going to do Justin Simmons? Is that possible? Adnan, what do you think about that? Do you think Justin Simmons is still a possibility? Is it realistic, or is that probably we'd probably had to pick one or the other?
I think it was a pick one or the other type scenario. I have no insider knowledge here. So, don't quote me on any of this and don't report my words or anything. But my guess is that Justin Simmons left Flowery Branch without a contract yesterday because they got some traction on this Matthew Judon deal. Because I don't think that this was all right, Terry Fontenot woke up today and, decided to call up the Patriots GM and was like, all right, let's make this trade. This isn't like fantasy football. This is, this was probably in the works for a while now. So I think the Falcons may have gotten wind that, they were maybe in the lead in the sweepstakes. And then, they sort of let Justin Simmons leave the building without a deal, because I don't think that unless they make some, drastic moves regarding, restructures, extending AJ Terrell, cutting a couple of players, I don't think that they will have the cap space to both give Judon an extension and to give Justin Simmons the number that he's looking for. So I'm guessing that this was they picked Judon over Simmons, probably because edge pass rush was maybe a bigger need than strong safety at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I also would be happy to have Simmons here, but yeah, I mean, I there's no denying that the bigger need was edge. So, I mean, if they had to pick one, probably needed to be edge. I guess I assumed that, they weren't, there was no Judon trade coming because there were teams rumored to be interested in him since basically the beginning of the offseason and nothing had happened. So I was like, okay, well, I guess maybe this isn't going to happen, but better late than never, certainly. And yeah, Aaron, what do you think about that? Do you think Justin Simmons is still a possibility, or do you think that's probably not going to happen at this stage?
I think Adnan's right. It's probably not going to happen, but I'll just, play the devil's advocate. And if the key for signing Justin Simmons is meeting his contract demand and convincing him that you're a contender, because I think that's the big thing with Justin Simmons. There's probably the two boxes. Again, as Adnan said, I am not an insider, but I'm just guessing. The two things that Justin Simmons wants is, because he's never played in a playoff game, he wants to play on a team that can compete because he's probably only got a couple more years left of peak play. And because of that, he probably wants to maximize what his opportunity is. This is the first time he's ever been a free agent. And so I think you can make the case now for the Falcons. If you're the Falcons, you can say, hey, we just added a pass rusher. We added Kirk Cousins. We're ready to go. Come join us, Justin. We're a playoff team. Everybody thinks it. So we're going to go out there and show everybody that we're a playoff team so you can get that first playoff bid. And who knows, once you get in the dance, maybe we can even make a push for the Super Bowl. And then I think with the contract thing, because the Falcons are probably going to have to move some money around, they are now potentially in a position where they can afford, to give Justin Simmons potentially what he wants, as well as afford a Matt Judon extension. So I think there is a case that it's still a possibility. Whether whether it's a likelihood, we're just sitting here guessing as far as that is concerned. But I wouldn't rule it out as a possibility for those reasons. But yeah, I probably generally think Adnan is correct, where it was probably going to be one or the other.
Yeah.
Aaron, how many times have you played devil's advocate in favor of the Falcons?
Never.
It's
not
once.
So weird to do that. It's so weird. I don't know. I don't like it.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, no, that it just feels gross. Yeah, but I ultimately agree with both these guys that Justin Simmons became less likely with this move. It's not necessarily like they can't do it. So let's make that clear. They can make $30 to $40 million happen like that. They can do it. There's nothing stopping them from doing that other than themselves, right? So now I'm not saying that would be prudent or wise to just go all in and restructure, because now you're on the Saints path if you do that. And like, because then the temptation is to do it again next year because we're so close, and then it's like now we're just in this death spiral where you're praying the cap goes up 30 million again, and or whatever it was, like some crazy amount. So at this stage, again, if Justin Simmons is the other move they're going to make and they're going to backload it, they don't need to make $40 million or whatever it is. They can probably, they're probably hoping to keep Judon close to his current cap number of like 6.7 this year, which means it's going to be backloaded. If they do a void year, that would help in that regard. Same thing with Justin Simmons, right? They're probably trying to keep his cap number down this year if they can. So it's possible if they want that deal to happen. I agree with Aaron's take that like there's no better way to convince Justin Simmons this is a serious defense than going out and making a serious trade like that. Because, like, yes, the edge room was bad. It was real bad. Like, we're not trying to sugarcoat that. Like, and the Judon trade like helps legitimize the edge room to being like maybe we could squint and this is like average. If everything hits right, if Ikic can wake up and some things like that, but the linebacking room very strong. The interior defensive line is awesome. Like, I mean, like if you can take one thing away, like people that say the Falcons defensive line sucks are wrong. The interior is really good, and maybe that's enough. If you have one good edge rusher and a great interior, and it's a deep interior too, like maybe that's fine. And corner might be a little sketchy. The second spot we don't really know. Safety, the second safety spot, but you've got Jesse Bates at 1. So like, if you're trying to make the case to Justin Simmons, like, hey, you want to play for a contender? We just fixed the biggest hole in our defense. The only other hole now is you, Justin. We just need you to come here and complete us. Then this is the best case you could have made for that. So, maybe that is an upcoming move that they will make. I know fans would love that. I would certainly be open to that approach as well. But you got to make some moves to do that, right? You're going to have to restructure guys. And if you extend Terrell, you could free up some money that way. They've seemed kind of loath to do that so far, so I don't know exactly what's going to happen with that. But the takeaway message is they can, right? But will they? That's more of the open question, and like probably will they is a little bit less likely now because they are tying up a lot of money presumably in this Judon contract. But it's possible. I think we'd all be pretty excited about that move, but we'll just have to wait and see. And again, it probably is at least 50% up to Justin Simmons. If Justin Simmons wants to be here, they'll get it done. I think. Like if Justin Simmons is like, I want to come to Atlanta, they can work it out. So really, I think a lot of it probably depends on Simmons, and that's not something we can predict. Like we don't know Justin Simmons' mind, right? That's not what we do here. I know Aaron and I are both #prophets, but we can't get into the mind of Justin Simmons. That's a bridge too far for us. So.
I think, not to cut you off, Kevin, I think the hope is, like, remember last year with Calais Campbell, where he had like 4 teams lined up to visit, and he visited the Falcons, and we're like, okay, well, he's going to visit these other 3 teams, and then we'll circle back later, and he'll sign, or he'll make a decision, and we'll see. And then he was like, forget that. I love the pitch that the Falcons made. I'm signing with the Falcons. We're hoping for that with Justin Simmons, but like his plan may just be like, I'm going to shop myself for the next couple of weeks. Training camp is going to be over. I'm going to show up like 10 days before the season starts, and I'll be ready to go, or all that sort of thing. And that may be on his mind. Or again, it could be a whole Calais Campbell situation. And this is the sort of part of that pitch to sell Justin Simmons and why he should forget, the 3-team tour that he's potentially going to go on over the next couple of weeks. And so that's kind of the hope.
Yeah, I think so. Real quick, before we move on to some of the other injury and preseason coverage, I want to get to the questions that were asked. We had Alex Foster with the $5 super chat. Thanks, Alex. Appreciate you. Alex says, everyone says we don't have the money to sign people, but can't we just put it on a credit card and then another one? Isn't that how that works? And yes, that's basically what we're talking about here with all these restructures. Like restructures are the credit cards at the NFL. You can just, shave off that base salary and move it down and just kick it, to next month's bill. And then when next month, aka next season comes, you just take that and you restructure it again, move it to next year's bill. That's how you get the Saints. If you keep doing that, now the Saints are an extreme example of this because they just like won't stop. They can't. Like I don't know if they're addicted to the rush of restructuring every contract or what. But yeah.
Like this year they could not. This year they had to make those restructures. They could not even trade their players. because of the dead cap hit. It's very glorious. I'm sorry for cutting you off, but
No.
continue.
Yeah, exactly. This is exactly the case. Like they've gone like way far to that extreme. You don't have to go that far every year, but like sooner or later the bill always comes due. But the good news for the Falcons is they have an owner that's willing to shell out any money that they need, essentially, at this point. So, like, you know, if you've got an owner that's willing to shell out the cash needed to do these types of things, then there's no limit to what you can do, essentially, as long as you can make it work cap-wise. So, you know, we'll see. We'll see what happens there. But yes, the short answer to your question is yes. Like, you can essentially just keep pushing the money forward and work with funny money and sign whoever you want. You know, that's what the Saints have been doing. The Saints signed free agents this year too. Like, I mean, I don't think that was wise, but they did. So, you know, and then
There's a part of me that was very jealous of them signing Chase Young, even though people know that I'm not the world's biggest Chase Young, but it's at least something that they did on their pass rush. Like, I would just do something, Atlanta. So they finally did something.
Yeah, they did. I ultimately the patience seems to have paid off. So happy that we ended up with Judon, for sure. And yeah, the other question from ATL Jet Jones 11, great name, with the $2 super chat. Thank you. He says, I'm wondering basically if our D line should look like Judon with Onyemata and Grady in the middle, and then Harrison on the other side. Yeah, I mean, we could definitely see that, especially on. I mean, I'm still not sure what they're going to do with Harrison. That could be a good sort of segue into the preseason game, because in the preseason game we saw Harrison line up inside and on the edge. And I think, you know, Harrison on the edge is probably more of like a base package sort of look, especially if they're going to more of those like 4-3 more looking fronts. But, you know, I don't know. But yeah, it's a good. I think that D-line would be pretty good, Jet Jones. I mean, against the run, it would be great. And then against the pass, hopefully it would be pretty competent. But, you know, on third downs, you know, probably Ikic's coming on, and we just hope that he can fill that role well. Didn't look incredible against the Dolphins backups, that's for sure. But, you know, during the season, like, Ikic was fairly solid, you know. So hopefully it'll get better than what we saw in preseason week 1. But, all right, Aaron, did you want to deliver your Andrew Stuber take? I've been making you wait like over 30 minutes. So,
well, basically my Andrew Stuber take is I hated the second string offensive line that started the game. They did not play well because they couldn't run the football. But relatively, like, Storm Norton's fine. We've seen what Storm Norton can do, although he had a really bad whiff on the first snap of the game on a block there. But, you know, of that second team offensive line, of the non-Storm Norton ones, Stuber was probably the best out of that group. That's not really saying a whole lot because he wasn't like he was good. And so, like, for me, as someone who is very worried about, you know, who is that last offensive lineman on the roster that is going to be inactive every single week as an interior player, Andrew Stuber is currently the front runner, because I was not a fan of Kyle Hinton last year when he got the one start in, I think, the Tampa Bay game. And I was just like, why is this guy, or like, I get it, you didn't have better options last year, and then like to go this whole offseason, right? You know, everybody else is complaining about the pass rush, and I'm just like, why aren't we signing a competent backup guard? And so I did not like what I saw from Kyle Hinton in year 2 or in last week. I did not like what I saw from Javon Gwynn. So, you know, Andrew Stuber, thumbs up. So far, so okay, I guess. And so, you know, I'm currently in the process of watching a whole bunch of other teams' guards to sort of see if there's anybody out there on the waiver wire that will be worth picking up. Matt Hennessy sounds like he's going to get cut by the Eagles, so I'm like, bring him back. Might as well bring him back.
Time. Let's go. Yeah. No, and I do wonder, like, oh, go ahead, Adnan. Yeah.
I was going to say the story isn't finished. Also, I think we lost 30 viewers in the process of going from Matthew Judon to backup offensive line.
Look.
That's what I do, baby.
Look, people need the Andrew Stuber takes, okay? There's actually, I mean, no, I think actually we're holding steady here. So appreciate everyone for not immediately turning off their televisions when we started talking about the third string offensive line, or second string, if in Andrew Stuber's case. My bad, but
I'm just messing with you. We didn't leave.
Shout out to everyone who stuck around for the Stuber takes, because that's that. Now they're gonna leave. Now that we teased the Stuber take at the beginning, now it's come. So that's the end. Yeah. But yeah. No, real quick before we keep going, guys, like, subscribe, appreciate that. Leave that 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice if you're listening to the audio after the show. And yeah, also for all of the channel members and patrons that are here, we have officially started up the signups for this year's patron / channel member fantasy leagues. I think I'm just gonna start calling them supporter fantasy leagues because that's a mouthful to say all that. So the supporter fantasy leagues are a go. There's a Google form on the Patreon page that you can fill out and sign up for. There's also one in the community tab, and it's also on the Discord, Falcoholic Discord server. So you can sign up there. Make sure you sign up in the next week or two. And the drafts, we'll get the leagues sort of sorted, and then we'll set up for a draft probably following the final preseason game, maybe that Monday. So yeah, thanks to everyone that's already signed up. And I just want to make sure everyone that wants in can get in. And if you're not already a supporter, you can sign up on YouTube. You can sign up on Patreon. All the tiers to get access to the fantasy leagues. And we appreciate everyone who's already joined up. Thanks, guys. All right. So before we get to more second and third string takes, Michael Penix, probably need to talk about him, I guess. That guy just seems, I feel like this whole show is going to be Michael Penix focused until the Judon trade happened. But yeah, I mean, just to kick it off on Penix, I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was solid opening. You can tell the arm talent is there, right? I mean, it's obvious. There were some things, and I would definitely recommend people go watch the QB Schools breakdown, and I think Chase Daniel did another breakdown on Penix that were pretty informative. And basically, a lot of the things that you liked with Penix is that he was able to get through his reads and sometimes get to the third read and throw that, and it was good. The mechanics were a little iffy, and that could just be sort of first game jitters, right? There were some footwork issues and things like that. But ultimately, you love to see the arm talent on display. The Chris Blair deep shot, just a beautiful pass, absolutely perfect. So I thought it was a pretty good opening for him. I would have liked to have seen more drives, but I mean, I understand that they don't want to throw him out there too much, especially if they're going to start rotating the offensive line out. So, but yeah, Adnan, I'll let you get the first crack. What'd you think of Penix's NFL debut?
It looked good. It was genuinely it wasn't. He didn't go out there and absolutely light everything on fire, but it's what you were sort of hoping to see. The arm talent is evident. I'm never going to doubt the arm talent. I saw it in person at camp, and the ball just shoots out of his hand. It is, it's beautiful to watch, actually. But one thing I really liked, he did not put the ball in harm's way at all. And this isn't him not putting the ball in harm's way by just throwing dink and dunk passes and screen passes. He was taking his shots downfield. And that's something that you will never have to worry about with Penix. He's going to take his chunk plays, for better or for worse. Even when sometimes he should, take the easy ones, but he'll figure that out over time. But yeah, it looked good. He looked like he never really had a sense of panic. During that first Mercedes-Benz practice, he looked very amped up, missed 5 of his first 6 passes, and, I was really curious about how he was gonna react to a live game setting against the Dolphins in front of their fan base, and, I was very sort of satisfied to see that he, didn't go out there and just sort of make a mess of things to start things out. But yeah, it looked good. He reacted well. He, like I said, the biggest thing for me is he did not put the ball in harm's way. The passes were good. The stat line, I think he was better than the stat line indicates. But overall, incredibly satisfied, and I'm looking forward to seeing him, play maybe another full half during this Saturday's game. I think it's at noon against the Ravens.
Yeah. No, I'm excited to see how he follows it up too. But yeah, Aaron, what'd you think of Penix's debut?
I was impressed. To me, my main concern with Penix over the next couple of years, as we don't get to see him, was whether or not he would sort of clean up the footwork and mechanics that I thought was a little wonky at Washington that would lead to him spraying some balls. And so seeing it in his first game, there was a couple of throws, as you mentioned, where maybe the footwork was not as clean, and that led to him maybe being a little bit off the money on a throw or here or there. But like, I kind of expected that, but it was not something where it was like a glaring issue where he was like, other than that one pass I think he threw to Casey Washington that was maybe a couple feet above his head. It wasn't like he was like spraying anything or anything like that. So like, my biggest worry going into the game was not a major issue, but it was enough of an issue to be like, yeah, I did not expect that issue to get completely resolved between January and August in his first preseason game. And so that's going to be something that we'll have to just continue to monitor over the course of the next 2 weeks, and then over the course of the next couple of seasons, before hopefully he doesn't get on the field. Hopefully everything goes according to Falcon plan, but we know, as Falcon fans, we know that ain't the case. But other than that, like, to me, the thing that was most impressive to me, because one of the things that I did think that he could do more at Washington that they didn't really ask him to do, because so much of their offense was so vertical by throwing the ball down the field, was sort of the quick game stuff. And I thought he operated that very well, and sort of kind of proving what I thought. Because like, I know a lot of people, when I compared him to Tua, people were like, that's a lazy comp because they're both left-handed, and it's like Penix has a much stronger arm, which is true, but like, he's like a stronger arm Tua. But I think the thing that Tua does really well is, being that sort of point guard that can get the ball out quickly to his playmakers. And I think Penix can do that as well. It's just the difference at Washington was they weren't getting the ball out. I mean, they were getting the ball out quickly. It was just down the field to their playmakers. And so I think he got to show that there is more to his game than just being a guy that's just going to throw deep balls all game, all day. So that to me was the thing that I think was impressive to me. I thought he had that ability in him, and so it was nice to sort of see it on display. So I think it was, about as good a debut as I realistically could expect. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't the greatest showing ever by a preseason quarterback. I still can remember, a Mitch Trubisky game back in the day, back in 2017, his like first preseason action, where he was lighting up some team in the preseason. It was like, okay, like this Trubisky guy, maybe they got it right by drafting him over Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson. That didn't age beautifully, but like, that's on the Trubisky scale of preseason performances. Like, Penix was like 8 Trubiskys is what I'm gonna say out of 10 Trubisky. So
gotcha.
It was a pretty impressive performance in my eyes.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a good performance. Again, I think the stuff, like, part of the issue with Desmond Ridder and why he was such a tough eval, and I'm not a quarterback scout. Like, this is, I like to call myself a vibe scout for quarterbacks, just because it's arguably the hardest position to scout. And there's a lot that goes into it. But looking at stuff like, if you watch the QB school video, it's like there's easy mechanical things you can point to as to why there was some accuracy issues on some of the throws. And when there's easy mechanical things you can point to, it's like, oh, you just fix these mechanical issues and it's fine. With Ridder, it was like, well, these mechanics look fine and the ball's still off target, so I don't really know what we fix here. And, now maybe that had something to do with it. But yeah, I mean, I think with Penix, I think that a lot of people think that he is pro ready. And maybe, like, if you threw him out there, he'd be fine, right? I think it's better for his long-term development if he gets an opportunity to spend at least a year in an NFL camp, in an NFL offense, work out those minor mechanical issues. Because if Penix fixes all of his mechanical issues, there's nothing he can't do on the football field. Like, if he cleans up some of those accuracy things, some of those overthrows, and gets his mechanics where they need to be, there's no throw he can't make. Like, I mean, his arm talent is incredible. And that's why the Falcons valued him so highly, is because you can't teach arm strength. You just can't, right? So, I hope that he can take this year, get acclimated, get accustomed, and fix those minor issues, right? And then come back and be ready to go next year or the year after, whenever they're ready for him to play. And I thought this first showing was pretty much exactly what I expected. I was like, I think he'll look good. I don't think he's going to, like, blow the doors off people. He's probably going to sail a couple throws or whatever. And, like, the thing with, like, Penix's off-target throws is, like, I don't know, and maybe it's just rose-colored goggles because he's a first-round quarterback, but it's like, it's sort of like, it was, like, overthrown, but it was like out of bounds, or it was like just through the hands, or the guy could jump for it, but it wasn't like overthrown into harm's way. It was like overthrown, not catchable, but relatively safe overthrow. And like if you're gonna overthrow it, at least do that. Like don't just like airmail it to where the safety is just like, oh wow, this is the easiest pick I'll see all day. And he didn't do that. He didn't really put the ball in harm's way. The only turnover being, of course, Chris Blair's fumble, but that was absolutely not Penix's fault. That was a perfect throw. Blair had time to get the ball and turn around. He just coughed it up. So, and then he had that bounce back catch. So good for him. But yeah, happy to see Penix's debut, and I think it was a pretty solid one. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, did you have anything else you want to add on Penix, Adnan, before we move on?
I mean, so far so good based on everything we've seen, in camp and in that first preseason game. And now it's like, now I'm still very intrigued and very curious about how he follows it up. And I hope he plays at least the full first half in week 2. And I hope that he plays plenty in week 3 of the preseason because I mean, you know, if all goes to plan after week 3 of the preseason, that's the last we're really going to see of him until training camp next year. So there's really no reason not to play him as much as possible over these next couple of weeks.
Yeah, no, I definitely think they should give him as much run as possible, and that kind of flips the coin over to the bad side of the quarterback situation, which is I thought Taylor Heinicke looked really problematic. But I probably should not deliver too many pointed angry criticisms of Falcons quarterbacks. That's been problematic for me. So I'll open the floor. Aaron, what do you think about Heinicke's performance? Was it as bad as I sort of thought it was?
I mean, it depends. Again, it's a Taylor Heinicke scale, right? Like to me, it was a classic Taylor Heinicke game, because it's like there was a couple of times where he was just like, "Screw it, I'm going to throw it deep, even if it's not really open, because I'm just Taylor Heinicke and I think I'm Brett Favre, and I don't have Brett Favre's abilities, but I'm going to play that style of sort of gunslinger. Who cares if the read tells me to throw it a different place? I'm going to take my shots." And so that's just kind of how Taylor Heinicke plays. So to me, I wasn't as down on it because I'm just like, this is classic Taylor Heinicke. This is what we got last year. It just, some weeks it worked for the Falcons, like against the Colts, and some weeks it didn't work for the Falcons, like against the Vikings and Cardinals. And so it's just like, it's a very hot and cold type of quarterback play that, and especially in the preseason when you don't necessarily have the caliber of weapons that can win in the ways that a Terry McLaurin can do, or Drake London can do, or yes, even a Scotty Miller and a Kadero Hodge, who were somehow Taylor Heinicke's favorite targets last year when he was starting. It doesn't quite work the same way when you don't have the weapons. That style of play, like that style of play, is really good when you have high-end weapons that can consistently win. But when you have back in talent at the wide receiver position of guys that probably are just practice squad caliber at best, like that's not going to work. So me watching Taylor Heinicke, I wasn't bothered by it. It was just like, yep, this is classic Taylor Heinicke. This is what you get. And sometimes it works. Again, like if you give him run with the second team receivers, probably against Baltimore, like it'll probably look better. But if you're giving him run with the third and fourth string guys, like this is probably not going to work. And that's just Taylor Heinicke.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. And it certainly wasn't a great setup for him. I think also like going up against a lower level of competition, you expect more from like a guy who started NFL games. But again, you do have to take into context the fact that his receivers are not starters either. So, I don't think the Falcons' deep depth receivers are particularly inspiring this year. And we'll see if that changes over the next couple of weeks. But yeah, Adnan, any Heinicke takes to share with the people?
I mean, it looked pretty bad, this past week, and I don't think it really matters because I think he went into it like, all right, I have that QB3 spot locked up, and it just felt like it felt like none of it really mattered because he's just going to be the QB3 on this roster going into the season, and I think that's what's ultimately going to end up happening. So I don't think he looked good, but I think it is. I think it will wind up being a moot point because I don't think that QB room is really changing. But he has a chance to sort of bounce back here on Saturday against the Ravens. So I'll be interested in seeing, you know, I'll be interested in seeing that bounce back.
Yeah. I hope that he can bounce back, certainly. But the whole like Nathan Rourke thing is bizarre to me, right? So we'll talk about Rourke here a little bit, but like I thought Rourke's performance was fine. Only a couple days of practice, so it wasn't. I don't think I was expecting anything great, like not a great command of the offense or anything, but had a nice run.
Hey, Josh Dobbs beat the Falcons on a few days of practice.
That's right. Year. That's true. We can't discount that. But I thought he should have had 2 touchdowns. One of them that was dropped. One of them that should have probably been caught inbounds, but wasn't. And then they just cut him, and they cut him like the next day to bring back John Paddock after they just basically kicked John Paddock out to get Rourke in. So that whole situation's bizarre to me. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that. Was Rourke just like really bad and I didn't see it, or was it just I'm guessing there's something else going on there. I don't know if they can handle his Canadian swagger. Maybe that's it. I don't know, but
I think he missed some easy throws. Like I remember one to, I don't know if it was Austin Stogner, where like Stogner, he was like scrambling around and Stogner was like wide open and flat and he threw it like 4 feet above his head and was like, what was that? But like the thing that Rourke did, and that was what was interesting because it was like he didn't have practice, so he didn't have command of the offense. And so I thought one of the things that was interesting from that game was like the Falcons didn't run really any play action with Penix or Heinicke. Like I think 10% of their total combined snaps were involved play action. And then it was like 27% for Nathan Rourke. And it was just basically because he doesn't know the offense and play action just simplifies the read. So it's just like 1, 2, if the 1 is open, throw it. If it's not, check it down to the 2. And I think that's probably what it was. It was just like, we need a guy, my guess is the Falcons are like, we need a guy that can at least operate the offense so that at least these 3rd and 4th string guys, we give them a fair chance to be evaluated. But if Nathan Rourke is going to be sailing passes 4 feet above a wide open Austin Stogner's head, like that's going to hurt, Austin Stogner, and as Adnan said, if we already know who our number 3 quarterback is going to be, then we just need a guy that can come in and just function in the offense. And that's the thing that John Paddock has, being in the offense for 3 months. Like he can operate it, and Nathan Rourke really can't for less than a week. That's my best guess.
No, I think that's the best answer I've heard on that situation. I didn't know if it was like he just has this incredible Canadian swagger that just can't be contained, and they're like, wow, we can't, like, if he stays here too long, he's just going to take over the team, so we have to get him out of here ASAP. But no, I hope that Rourke finds success elsewhere. Certainly, I think it was a fun performance at the very least. We did not have any fun watching Taylor Heinicke.
Yeah,
I thought Rourke's performance was fun. It made the end of that watch party at least a little bit entertaining. So thank you, Nathan Rourke. We barely knew ye, but it was good while it lasted. I enjoyed it. And we'll see what Paddock can do. I know the team was somewhat praising Paddock before, so I was kind of like, wow, they really just dropped him they really dropped him quick for Nathan Rourke. So I was kind of surprised that maybe they felt a little bit of remorse. They're like, oh, we did our boy John Paddock a little dirty there, so we should get him back in here. But if he can like keep that offense on the field for like longer than a play or two, that would probably be beneficial for all those guys fighting for the practice squad. So I can understand that angle. I think that was a good angle. But Adnan, you got any Nathan Rourke takes?
No.
Good. I like that. Moving on. Yes, good. You don't have to. When I ask that question, there's not an obligation to have a take. I just want to make sure I'm not steamrolling whatever takes you may have. So,
no, I appreciate you asking, but no, I have no Nathan Rourke takes.
Okay, good. Moving on.
Usually Adnan tries to BS and answer even when he doesn't have a take, and the fact that he was just like, no.
No. I have nothing to say. Yeah, let's get out of here. I do want to touch on like Casey Washington. I thought he had a very good day. I think he had to deal with some off-target stuff certainly, but I thought that was a very inspiring first preseason game for Washington, who seems to me like Washington's basically locked up a roster spot. But Anna, what do you think about? I know you got to watch him in camp, so what do you think about Casey Washington's debut?
Yeah, I mean, it was fine. It was a fine debut. It was, I think, with Rondell Moore's injury, Casey Washington is probably, very likely to make this 53-man roster even before Moore's injury. This regime drafted him. He looked fine in camp. He looked really good during that second year high school practice, and then he looked really good before he sustained what looked like a knock. Like, it wasn't a full on injury, but he did have to be, helped off the field, and then he came back into the game at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. He seems to have a bit of chemistry going with Michael Penix. So, Casey Washington looks fine. I think he'll make the 53 man. He will probably have to sort of showcase himself on special teams to really solidify it, because he's sort of in that hierarchy where you have to, contribute to special teams at least a little bit to make the roster. But Casey Washington looked fine. Like I'm more than satisfied with what I've seen from a sixth round wide receiver in Casey Washington up to this point. I know some people are saying he's going to be Puka Nakua, but let's slow our rolls a little bit there. Like, let's fully pump the brakes when it comes to comparing him to one of the best rookie seasons from a wide receiver we've seen in a very long time. In Puka Nakua last year. But yeah, I think he'll make the 53, and I think he'll be a very decent depth piece for this team this year.
Yeah, no, I agree. And Aaron, anything you want to add on Casey Washington? I've been pretty happy with what we've seen from him so far.
Yeah, I think he's a virtual lock to make the roster even before the Rondell Moore injury. Just unless an Austin Mack or a Josh Ali just really was lit the world on fire in these preseason games, it was just gonna, like, who else we're gonna keep. And so yeah, I tend to agree with. I think it was fine. Like, he had a couple of solid moments, a couple of other ones that were kind of rookie mistakes, maybe a little bit. On that one deep ball to Penix, I thought he didn't time his jump particularly well on a well thrown ball for that one. But yeah, I think Casey Washington's looking solid, and I've seen the Puka Nakua comps, and Puka Nakua had a better rookie season than Julio Jones did, and it's like, what are the odds that Casey Washington, who didn't have his first 100-yard game until his last college game, is that level of rare elite, once in a lifetime, like not even once in a generation, like once in a lifetime type of player? Probably not. Let's say it's not zero, but it's probably 0 point something, so it's like that type of hype train that's been surrounding Casey Washington. Like, I'm just always like, okay, like, he's not that good, guys. But I think when you take him out of the Puka Nakua scale, it was a solid debut.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think anyone making Puka Nakua comparisons for any wide receiver ever, you're almost certainly going to be wrong. Eventually, someone's going to be right, but probably going to be wrong like 99% of the time, because that was just an incredible season and a confluence of factors that led to him getting that target volume immediately and that sort of thing. So, not expecting that, but yeah, I mean, I think Casey Washington, the idea is hopefully he can be Drake London's backup and be solid if Drake London has to come off the field for any reason. And that's sort of what I'm hoping. So, didn't really think like any of the other receivers really stood out. Which is maybe problematic because we lost Rondell Moore, right? and maybe we've lost Jakeem Grant as well. We'll see. So they may still be dipping into the wide receiver market, but we'll see there. I did want to get your take on Julian Davenport, Aaron, because that was one that I was like, I'm not sure if this is serviceable or bad. I think he was playing some guard too, but what'd you think about Davenport? Because he's the other guy I kind of have in like the back pocket as like maybe this is someone that they might keep as like the extra offensive lineman.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that he got to start at left tackle.
Yeah.
That surprised me a little bit. He was fine. Julian Davenport's an interesting player because, like, whenever he's had to play in the regular season, he has not been good. And usually the teams that sign Julian Davenport are teams that are like so bad on their offensive line that they're just like, well, we just need somebody out there. It's kind of like the Giants last year with Jalen Mayfield, where we just need a body and we'll even take Jalen Mayfield. And it didn't work well for the Giants. And that's kind of, not to say Julian Davenport's as bad as that. I don't think he is, but like it's kind of been that's sort of been his thing all season long. So his entire career for like the 7 years or whatever it's been that he's been in the NFL. But like you can tell, like, yeah, it's like maybe he's a little bit better than what he has been in the four. So it's like I kind of want to see him against the Ravens to sort of see a little bit more. Like I'm as I said with the Andrew Stuber stuff, I need to see a lot more from this offensive line in this next game. But yeah, I think that he had some fine moments, but it was interesting that he was the left tackle, and wasn't he the most recent one that we signed, right?
I believe so. Maybe Stuber was more recent, but it was pretty close, I think.
I feel like Stuber was like in late June and Davenport was in July, right?
Davenport was right before camp started.
Yeah, Davenport was definitely recent, but yeah. So yeah, I mean it's impressive that he's kind of risen up that high. So I think he's one to monitor. I think him and Stuber are sort of the guys, like, because Storm Norton's making it, and then it's like, do they keep 8 or 9? What's going to go on there? If they keep 8, who's that extra guy right now? I think I had Kyle Hinton there because they just seem to like Kyle Hinton.
Mm-hmm.
He did not look good in this preseason game, so we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, I was curious your take on that because I was like, I just don't know, like if this is like good or just like not good. And I wasn't gonna watch that game 3 times. I was like, after the second watch, I was like, no, I'm not gonna watch this again. So just gonna ask Aaron, and that'll be how I deal with that. But yeah. Adnan, anyone else on the offensive line you want to touch on before we move on? It was not all that impressive. They missed Ryan Newsel, I think. I think him not being there, I think, was a big deal.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, the offensive line in general, I think the stat was they had more. The running backs had more run attempts than they did rushing yards in that entire first half. And then Jason McClellan broke that with like 1 rush to start the third quarter. But yeah, I think if anything, it's sort of it was one of those games where Ryan Newsel looked better just in regard to his absence, because it's like, hey, these guys look like ass without me out there. So, I think the real winner out of this was Ryan Newsel, who didn't even play.
Yeah.
And I do think that his spot as backup center is pretty secure unless this injury is a lot worse than the team is letting on.
Yeah. It doesn't sound like he's going to miss serious time. Hopefully he'll be back for this next week. I know Gina probably would have given us an update. She had to turn around and go back home at the beginning of practice because she forgot her computer. Shout out to Gina for the coverage. But yeah, we'll get an update hopefully towards the end of the week that Newsel will be able to play. Because I think they were hoping to have him and I think Newsel's going to make it, like, for sure. So, I'm curious to see what happens with that. But I think if that, like, it seems like the second team offensive line was basically always having Newsel as the center, and that makes a difference. Like, when you lose the guy like that you had as your guy for the entire camp, and then right before the preseason game you lose him, I mean, that's just going to be rough on everyone. So hopefully that is a problem of the past starting this week. But
I mean, it's like the Falcons playing Jalen Mayfield at tackle all of camp and preseason, and then just throwing him in at guard for week 1.
Yeah, there you go. Oh man, the slander, it's wonderful. I love it. But yeah, I'm sure all the people. I'm sure. Yeah, no, of course we do. There's no way we can get around it.
This is me defending Mayfield. Like
yeah,
this is me.
It's simultaneously slander and defense at the same time.
I have actively had this take for years. I feel like nobody has sort of not fully defended him more than I have, but like nobody has sort of
set him up for failure. They did, absolutely.
Nobody has sort of justified it more. And I feel like I've done a good job of it, because last year I ran into his dad at training camp, and his dad did not hate me the way that he probably would have some other members of the media.
Mm-hmm. Me, I think I know who you're talking about, because there was somebody that every week last summer when I was talking about Jalen Mayfield and why he's not going to make the team, was always hitting me up on Twitter and all that stuff. So yeah.
Comes with the territory, sometimes look, you gotta have a take, and sometimes the take is not favorable to some players, and that's just the way it goes, unfortunately.
I mean, we had Isaiah Oliver's uncle or something in here writing comments, after every single show.
Yeah, shout out to I can't remember your name. I'm sorry, Mr. Oliver. Thank you for your comments. We appreciate that. Interesting stuff for the offensive line. We'll move away from the slander, talk about some good stuff. On the defense, I really wanted to shout out Antonio Hamilton and Kevin King. I thought those two guys, Antonio Hamilton, you could tell he belongs to the starters. It's oh yeah, this guy's just clearly out here playing with backups when he should be with the starters. So that was nice to see. Okay, we've got a really good depth corner. And Kevin King was a total shock to me because, I don't think I had any expectations for Kevin King whatsoever. He hasn't played in 2 years, but he looks like he's in football shape. And he had a pick and almost had another pick. The Dolphins guy threw it right to him. So yes, I'm glad he held on to it, I guess is the short answer. But he was certainly in position, and I thought he looked pretty good throughout the snaps that he played. So what do you think about how the secondary looked, Adnan, in this one?
Yeah, no, I mean, Antonio Hamilton was laying down the hit stick over and over again in this game. He had, I think, at least 3 huge hits where I was like, God damn, Antonio Hamilton, you don't want to run at this dude right now. And then, Kevin King had the interception. It's good. It's nothing but a good thing, right? Because these are two guys who are competing for a roster spot. They may see the field, at some point. I think Hamilton will, given just the law of averages of, injuries and possible benchings. I think we will see Hamilton eventually for an extended period of time in the secondary. But, I don't like the top end talent of this cornerback room after AJ Terrell, but maybe we can sort of mitigate it a little bit by having some, by developing some unexpected depth, because both of these guys were essentially for free, right? Not for free in terms of they're playing for free, but you got them for very cheap, on the market. And if they can be a Bleedy Ray Wilson level type player for you, then that's a huge victory.
Yeah, I agree. I like those guys, and I was a little bit surprised we didn't see more of Clark Phillips in this one. I thought he would get the lion's share of the snaps in this game, but they pulled him pretty quickly in the game.
That's a good sign for him.
It is. Yeah, I don't think he's in danger of not making the roster, but I thought we might see a little bit more of him. But Aaron, what do you think about the corners in the secondary in this game?
Yeah. I thought Clark Phillips got the same treatment that guys like Kentavious Street and Eddie Goldman got, that basically got 1, maybe 2 series, and it was okay, you're out of here. And as Adnan said, I think that's a clear indicator that these are guys that the team is expecting to play in the season. They want to mitigate that injury risk with them. But yeah, I think with Antonio Hamilton and Kevin King, I think they both played well. As Adnan said, Hamilton was really throwing his weight around in run support. King got 1 interception and almost had a second one in the game. Then Crookshank had a nice hit at one point to jar the ball loose as well. So the one thing you can say about the defense, who was it, Mooten or Eifler, the linebacker that had the big hit? That
I think it was Mooten, right? Adam, they both played decent for sure.
Yeah. Whichever one, I can't really tell the difference between them. They're basically the same person in my eyes. One's 52 and one's
all linebackers look the same to you, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I am racist against linebackers, absolutely. But I think the one thing you can say about this defense is that they were flying around hitting people, and it was okay, as we say, preseason you're not getting great football, but if you're getting energetic football, that's at least entertaining to watch, where you're seeing people trying to knock people out.
Yeah, no, I like to play the secondary. I thought that was good. You mentioned Kentavious Street. I thought he came in for 6 snaps and was just dominate, I'm done, and he just left. It was okay, great. Yeah, and it's does Street even make the roster? I hate leaving him off, but it's I don't know how he fits in, because you can't. I mean, do you think they're going to cut Dorless? Dorless is definitely behind Street on the depth chart, but are they really cutting their 4th rounder? And it's it's a good problem to have. Don't get me wrong, but it's Street definitely looked good. The guys we talked about look great, and yeah, I just have a sweating fit every time I try to pencil in the 6 interior guys that are gonna make this roster. It's just because Taquan, it looks like Taquan's like with the starters, like he didn't even play. So, Eddie Goldman has defied all the odds to look like he's going to be the nose tackle. So, yeah, I don't know what they're going to do on the interior, but I like it. Whatever they do, I'll probably like it as long as they don't, cut anybody too crazy. But, yeah, so far felt good about that. But yeah, anyone else you want to touch on, Aaron, before we sign off tonight? I know there's probably a lot of guys, but yeah, anyone in particular?
I mean, Zach Harrison looked great. I thought, I've been wanting to see him as a true 5-tech defensive end, 3-4 D end, and I thought he looked great in that role. You're right with like Kentavious Street. Like I have been consistently leaving him off my depth chart, but he got the starter treatment. What we were talking about with Clark Phillips and Eddie Goldman and all those guys. So that's a good sign. And then maybe because the Falcons are so deep on their interior D line, it's like, could they shop one of these veteran guys like a Kentavious Street and maybe get something back in return, for that? And so it's a good problem to have. But yeah, Zach Harrison to me really was kind of the standout because he is a player that I have reasonably high hopes for in terms of sort of being, to me, of the young guys that we've brought in on that interior D line with Rourke and Brandon Dorless. Like Harrison's the one that I'm expecting to contribute now, while Rourke and Dorless are like maybe they'll be regular contributors in like 2 or 3 years. And so it was nice to see Harrison show in that game that like, yeah, he seems like he's ready to go.
Yeah. No, I agree with you there. Yeah, Adnan, anyone else you want to touch on from the preseason game?
Yeah, I think Chris Blair had that big catch. Right? Correct me if I'm wrong. He had that like very long catch. I'm happy for him for that catch because he had that really bad fumble right beforehand, which, in fairness to the refs, I do think it was a fumble, but it could have been, maybe a little bit bang bang, of a play. But yeah, I'm happy for him because I feel like if he doesn't make that big play later on, it would have been, really bad for him overall on the night. But yeah, the receivers looked fine. Carlos Washington, he didn't have great numbers. In fairness, he ran behind, an offensive line that wasn't really making huge holes for him, but he had that big run in the red zone, which was nice to see. And then he finished it off with the touchdown. But overall, I think Jace McClellan looked better overall in the night because I am still very interested in that RB3 battle between Jace and Washington. It looked like Jace was in the lead. And then, right before they left to Miami, it seemed like Washington took a stranglehold of that RB3 spot. I do think that Washington is still in the lead today, but I feel like Jace kind of closed that gap just a little bit in that first preseason game. And I can't wait to see how it continues to shake out in the next couple of preseason games.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I agree. Like, I think we were kind of expecting, based on the camp reports, that Washington was going to be the guy that was more impressive, and I think it ended up being Jace a little bit. Jaceris, first of his name, coming out there and looking. Nobody really looked great because the run blocking was pretty bad, but I thought Jace was more efficient, certainly on his touches. They certainly gave Washington a lot of touches. So you can read into that however you want, but not sure what to take away from that battle. Hopefully the run blocking will be a little bit better in the future games, because we really couldn't even evaluate those guys. I mean, I feel like they were trying to escape the backfield constantly. So I mean, it's never a great situation. Yeah. All right. Well, let me get to. We got a couple of donations here. We got George Costanza with the $2 super chat. Welcome back, George. George says he's been in Aruba, so George flexing that Aruba vacay on us. But yeah, it sounds great, George. Welcome back. He says she's a 10, but she's a diehard Saints fan. Yeah, sorry, can't do it. No, that's a disqualifier for me. I don't know about you guys, but yeah, can't partner with any diehard Saints fans. It's just too much relationship strife I'm not going to get into it. We're just not going to start it up. Yeah.
Is it like Die Hard, like casual?
He said Die Hard. He said Die Hard.
Hard.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. Because if there's like wiggle room, then there's a chance, right? You could be like, you're telling me there's a chance, but no, it's Die Hard, so we're not. Yeah, I can't do it. Sorry. Yeah.
You're constantly bringing up Pierre Thomas and Deuce McAllister and all this stuff.
Think of the 28-3 jokes.
Yep. Yeah. No, can't handle that. It's not going to work out. Yep.
Like he's rocking a Taysom Hill jersey. It's like,
can't do it.
Your home is supposed to be your like domain away from all the troubles, and that now you have all of that in there, so you just have no peace.
Mm-hmm. We got So we got Brandon with the $2. Thank you, Brandon. Says, how long do you think it will take Mike Florio to make a video complaining about this trade? I'm surprised there hasn't been one yet, honestly. I thought he would have been on just ready to go with that, but yeah, no. Maybe he's finally given up. Yeah.
He's probably mourning the JJ McCarthy injury.
Yeah, probably a little too down in the dumps. And that does suck, by the way. I feel for you. If any Vikings fans that just happen to be hanging out, I'm sorry about that, guys. That's absolutely crushing. Just terrible stuff. So hopefully JJ will be all right going forward. But yeah, that's just absolutely terrible. Hate to see it. Hate to see that ever, especially any first round pick, but quarterback in particular. Hate to see it. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for joining us. I think we'll pretty much cap it off there. We didn't talk specifically about the Trice injury. Obviously, it sucks. We talked about sort of the aftermath, which is the Judon trade, and then with DeMarcco Hellams. Real quick on DeMarcco Hellams, we don't know how long DeMarcco Hellams is going to miss. The fact that they haven't put him on IR probably suggests it's not season ending. Now, that could mean like he plays in December, or like he tries to come back for the playoffs type of thing, but we just don't really know. So we'll see there. It's we'll check and see what's going on with DeMarcco Hellams. Hopefully we'll get an update somewhat soon. But regardless, I think the Justin Simmons thing, it's like, I think even if Hellams was healthy, that's something they would probably consider, because it's like, again, the safety depth was kind of the concern, not necessarily, the starter, like the opposite of what I said. The starter opposite Bates was the concern, not necessarily the overall depth. I mean, I think with Richie Grant, if Richie Grant and DeMarcco Hellams are your depth safeties, I think you're pretty happy with that. But, I think you're looking for more from your second safety. So, we will start. We will sort of hope for the best with Hellams, that it won't be a major loss, like for most of the season. But again, at this point, we don't really know. So that's sort of the injury updates there. But thanks so much, guys, for tuning in with us tonight, hanging out for this fun show where we got a pass rusher. We could celebrate that finally. And that's good. I'm excited to see what Judon can do here in Atlanta. I think it's going to be very good match. Much better than the Dante Fowler match, for the record, the last time they did something like this. Yeah, no. Dante Fowler, I think we were all skeptical of from the very beginning, and that turned out exactly like I expected. I feel pretty good about the Judon move. So hopefully that'll also turn out well. But yeah, like, subscribe, guys. Definitely check out the Patreon. Check out the YouTube channel memberships. If you want to get involved in those fantasy leagues that I mentioned, make sure you sign up on there over the next week or two. Or just sign up to support the show. We appreciate that too. Leave that 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice if you haven't done that already. Really appreciate those. Those help us out. And if you have comments, questions, whatever, leave them on the show. We will get to as many as we can. In between, I will have my next roster projection that I referenced tonight, that my struggles of picking the 6 interior guys, coming out probably on Friday morning. And then we will, of course, be back for our Falcons versus Ravens watch party for week 2. As we take you guys through the entirety of the second preseason game, which hopefully will be a little bit more exciting as we see maybe a few more of sort of the starting caliber guys, or maybe just more of the depth players than just immediately going to Taylor Heinicke after the first quarter. So that's the hope. We'll hope that it's good. Thank you guys for joining us. Before we sign off, of course, want to thank our guest tonight. He's Aaron Freeman at Locked On Falcons. I know, Aaron, you just put out a show right before this one talking about the Judon trades. If you guys didn't get enough Judon takes, make sure you go check out Aaron's episode. Anything else you want to plug, Aaron?
I talk about Drake London and the explosiveness of the offense because I had just finished recording an episode before the Judon trade happened. So I think that's coming up in like 30 minutes over on Locked On Falcons. So if you're, after you check out the Judon episode, go check out that to get the rundown on practice today and the potential ceiling of this Falcons offense being raised because of how explosive they're going to be, because they're going to be chucking the ball deep to Drake London all day long. So go check that out.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely check out that. Aaron is the true grinder. Are you back to 5 shows a week now, or is it 6? Like, how many?
I haven't taken a single day.
It's
off.
never stopped. Okay,
yeah.
That's what I'm saying. He's the grinder. So, yeah, if you guys need more content, Aaron's got you. Always, he's got something to talk about. Even if you don't want more content, Aaron's got it. So, you should watch it anyway, just to help out. But thanks, Aaron, once again for coming on. We appreciate you. Of course, also with us tonight, my co-host Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way. Adnan, anything you're working on you want to let the people know about?
Well, I'm going to plug the Falcoholic.com, and also I'm going to be doing some fantasy football work for SBNation.com, the main website. That'll start, I think, late next week with some fantasy football sleeper articles, which will be publishing in the next couple of weeks. So, keep an eye out for that.
Absolutely. Definitely check that out, guys. Check out thefalcoholic.com. I know we had Trice on, one of our newest contributors. He was on the watch party. Put out a great article talking about sort of how the Falcons can maneuver and do some of these moves, like this Judon trade that just went down. So you can check that out on the site. We got lots more stuff coming your way as we get ramped up for the regular season. I'm Kevin Heinicke of Falcoholic. Kevin, thank you once again. Make sure you like and subscribe. Leave a comment if you got one. Check us out on Patreon, channel memberships, whatever you got. And thanks again, everyone, for hanging out with us tonight on the Falcoholic Live. We'll be back for our watch party on Saturday, bright and early, 11:45 a.m. to get prepped for that noon kickoff. And we'll be taking you through another preseason spectacular here on the Falcoholic Live. So until then, guys, enjoy the rest of your Wednesday night. We'll see you this weekend. Have a great night, folks. Thanks.